Have you ever witnessed a lone figure standing against a powerful gang, determined to protect everything he holds dear? In this gripping tale, our most thrilling moment arrives when Jack, an elite Delta Force operative, confronts a group of relentless bikers determined to seize his grandmother's beloved farm. Armed with flashbangs and steeled by years of intense military training, Jack launches an ingenious, high-stakes ambush that leaves the outlaws reeling. It's a showdown packed with adrenaline, courage, and unwavering family bonds. Want to find out how Jack, together with his grandmother's resolute spirit, defies these ruthless intruders? Stick around to the end of this story for the unforgettable conclusion. Also, if you enjoy compelling tales of bravery, resilience, and unlikely heroes, please consider subscribing to Farmer's Story, my channel dedicated to sharing more incredible stories just like this. Every subscription helps us grow our community of listeners and inspires us to bring you more heart-pounding adventures. The wind whispered through rows of tall corn and golden wheat surrounding the modest farmhouse. Though the sun was setting, it still cast a warm glow across the fields, a comforting vista earned by decades of steady labor. At 93 years old, Beatrice B. Thatcher had devoted most of her life to this land. The soil itself seemed to carry her memories, wartime letters, loved ones lost, the simple pleasure of a dawn breaking over distant hills. In this rural county, neighbors were scarce. Many had moved away for better homes or passed on, leaving B content in her solitude, accompanied by the steady rhythms of farm life. She was frail in figure but straight-backed, with bright blue eyes that seldom missed a detail. Whenever she ventured into the nearby town for supplies, shopkeepers would greet her politely, recognizing a local fixture of quiet resilience. Her battered pickup, usually loaded with fresh produce, chugged steadily along the back roads a few times each month. Otherwise, the farm's driveway saw little traffic. From time to time, curious travelers might drop by, asking if she needed help fixing a wobbly fence post or an aging water pump. B would usually thank them, but gently decline, determined to maintain her independence. Yet over the past few weeks, hushed rumors had swept through the town. A few ruffians, bikers, and petty criminals were allegedly roaming the outskirts, pressuring remote property owners to sell. Most folks dismissed it as another tall tale, but B couldn't quite ignore the unease that tugged at her heart. Just as twilight settled, she heard the crunch of gravel. The noise was jarring in its deliberate slowness. Peering through the window, B saw the beams of two headlights drawing closer, revealing a pickup she didn't recognize. The engine cut abruptly, and the slam of doors followed. Two figures emerged, silhouettes against the fading light. B felt her pulse quicken. Their posture exuded confidence, bordering on menace. She inhaled deeply and moved to the front porch. Dressed in her threadbare cardigan, she might appear an unlikely defender of any realm. But B had weathered wars and personal tragedies in her lifetime. She did not lack courage, even at 93. If these men had come to buy produce, fine. If they had darker intentions, she would not cower. The men soon came into view, one tall and lanky, the other stockier, sporting tattoos and a smug grin. Their eyes swept over the porch and the fields beyond, as though sizing up the property. B stood firm at the top of the wooden steps. She had never been one for showdowns, but instinct warned her that these strangers could not be trusted. She mustered the calmest tone possible. "Evening. Can I help you, gentlemen?" Her question hung in the still air. The men exchanged glances before the taller one stepped forward, doffing his cap in a gesture that seemed more mocking than polite. As he opened his mouth to speak, B braced herself. This unexpected visit would not be simple. She sensed it in the gleam of their eyes, in the way they carried themselves like predators closing in on an unsuspecting victim. "Name's Travis," the taller man said, his voice a feigned drawl meant to sound casual. "This here's Mick." He motioned to the burly figure who merely nodded, his gaze fixed on B with a curious mixture of amusement and scorn. "We heard you might be interested in selling this place, ma'am." B steadied her breath. "I'm not, and no one around here ever mentioned I was." Travis shrugged, taking a step up the porch. The old steps creaked under his boot, but he didn't seem to care. "Must have been a rumor then. Still, me and Mick got a knack for buying rural spots like this, cheap." A subtle emphasis lingered on the last word. Mick let out a low chuckle, scratching at the inked serpent coiled around his forearm. The unspoken threat was clear. They expected an easy sale at a criminally low price. B recognized intimidation when she saw it. She'd witnessed bullies of all stripes over her long life. None had ever swayed her. Raising her chin, she refused to shrink before them. This farm has been in my family for over 70 years. It's not for sale, not at any price. Mick spat a wad of tobacco onto the gravel below, eyeing B with disdain. Don't be so hasty, Granny. Times are tough. Could be you don't want to be out here alone, especially at your age. Accidents happen. His tone slipped from feigned politeness to naked threat. Despite the tremor in her hands, B.A. planted her feet. I can look after myself. I've done it this long, haven't I? She pointed toward their pickup. Whatever it is you're selling, take it down the road. Travis smirked as if enjoying a private joke. That's your final say, huh? Well, all right. He turned, heading down the steps with an air of frustration, or perhaps disappointment. Before getting into the truck, he glanced back, his expression darkening. We'll see how long your luck holds, old lady. They left a trail of swirling dust as the truck rumbled off. Bea listened to the sound fade, her heart pounding so fiercely she had to lean against the porch railing to steady herself. She stayed outside for several minutes, letting the night's silence wash over her, trying to quell the lingering tension that rattled her bones. Finally, she mustered the resolve to go back inside. Locking the front door behind her, she allowed the weight of the encounter to sink in. Over the years, she'd always managed to handle day-to-day difficulties alone, fixing fences, dealing with the occasional stray drifter. But something about these two men felt different. Their brazenness, their confidence in the face of her refusal, suggested they belonged to a larger network of troublemakers. Pulling out her old rotary phone, she dialed her grandson, Captain John Jack Thatcher. She rarely disrupted him. She knew he was a busy man, often away on classified assignments. But this time her gut told her that if these men returned, they wouldn't come bearing empty threats. After several rings, Jack's familiar voice answered on the other end, laced with concern. Bea inhaled to steady herself. Telling him about this confrontation might set events into motion, ones she couldn't fully predict. But as the dial tone hummed in her ear, she knew she had no choice. In a military training compound more than 1,000 miles away, Jack Thatcher finished a late-night workout, sweat dripping from his temples. Officially, he was on a temporary advisory mission. Unofficially, he was considering retirement from active duty. He had served in the Army's Delta Force for over a decade, completing high-risk operations that shaped him into a soldier feared by enemies and respected by allies. His phone rang, an unusual occurrence at this hour. Spotting the caller ID, he felt his stomach clench. Grandma B. She rarely called unexpectedly. He pressed the phone to his ear, bracing for the worst. Jack, it's me, B said, voice trembling slightly. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I had some unwanted visitors tonight. Instantly, Jack's senses sharpened. Are you hurt, Grandma? What happened? She recounted the story. Two men, Travis and Mick, who tried to coerce her into selling the farm. The subtle threats, their bold departure. Jack felt anger simmer, memories of his operational past flashing before him, times when he'd seen criminals exploit the vulnerable. I'm all right, B added, as though sensing his worry. Just shaken. Jack exhaled, the protective instinct kicking in. Grandma, you shouldn't face this alone. They won't just give up. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, glancing around the empty gym. I'll come. As soon as I can get a flight, I'm on my way. You don't have to. I do, he cut her off gently. Your family. Stay safe, lock the doors, and call the sheriff if they come back. His tone softened. I love you. B's voice softened in turn. I love you too, Jack. I'm sorry to drag you into this. He shook his head, though she couldn't see him. This is exactly where I need to be. I'll see you soon. Hanging up, he stared at the phone for a long moment, tension coiling in his muscles. In Delta Force, he was trained to neutralize threats swiftly, but those missions were always far from home. Now that same skill set might be needed on American soil for a cause deeply personal. Jack wasted no time. He called in a few favors to arrange a flight back to his home state. The entire journey, his mind raced. He'd lost his parents at a young age, and Grandma B had practically raised him. She never hesitated to support him, even when his life choices led him to a shadowy world of secret missions. Now, with her safety on the line, his purpose felt clearer than any classified directive ever had. By the time he boarded his plane, the soft glow of the cabin lights only underscored the darkness in his thoughts. He tried to recall the farm, its long driveway, the orchard, the hayfields beyond, a place of peace and sanctuary. He knew one thing for sure. If these men threatened B again, they discovered just how deadly a Delta Force commander could be when his family was at stake. A crisp dawn was breaking over the Thatcher farm when B awoke, heart fluttering from uneasy dreams. She rose from I pushed to bed, wrapped a light shawl around her shoulders, and performed her usual morning tasks, feeding the chickens, checking the stalls, ensuring the gates were secure. Each routine offered a small, comforting familiarity, though her mind kept drifting to the memory of those men. After tidying up, she brewed coffee and settled onto the porch swing, the wood creaking beneath her as she gently rocked. The wide fields glistened with dew, and her horses grazed in the distance. For a few seconds, she dared to hope that yesterday's encounter was just a fluke, but deep down, she sensed the storm was far from over. Around mid-morning, Bea heard a rumbling engine approach, her breath caught, half expecting Travis and Mick again. Instead, an unfamiliar motorcycle rolled up, the rider removing his helmet to reveal a younger face, hard, yet curious. He wore a leather jacket with some sort of gang patch on the back. He dismounted, offering a sly grin. "Morning, ma'am. Nice spread you got here." His voice dripped with self-assured arrogance. "Name's Red. Heard you might be open to certain arrangements regarding this land." Bee's heart thumped. "Another one?" She squared her shoulders. "I've told the others. This farm isn't for sale. You people need to leave me alone." Red scoffed, throwing a glance at the porch swing. "Old lady like you, all alone. Hardly safe. Why not let us help? My friends and I can offer protection and a tidy sum of kind if you turn over the deed." His smirk conveyed he already knew her likely answer. She set her jaw. "I'm not interested in your cash, nor your so-called protection. Now kindly get back on that bike and go. I won't ask again." For a moment, Red's gaze flashed with irritation. He took a step closer, fists tightening. "I think you're confused about who's in charge here." Before B could respond, a calm yet firm voice rang out from behind. "She's in charge, and you're trespassing." B nearly sagged in relief. Jack stood there, having arrived only minutes earlier, but already assessing the situation. Dressed simply, he looked unassuming, yet Red's eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt at his poised stance. The biker eyed Jack, lip curling. "That's so, you're the grandson, right? The one they said might be trouble. Well, guess what? You got no idea what's coming." His tone was menacing, but Jack's expression remained unchanged. "You can leave on your own," Jack said quietly, "or in an ambulance. Your call." Red seemed momentarily indecisive. Finally, he snorted, turning back to his motorcycle. "Fine. Enjoy playing hero while you can, but this isn't over." He revved the engine, spraying dirt as he tore off. When the dust settled, B exhaled shakily. "Jack," she murmured, walking unsteadily into her grandson's arms. He held her gently, pressing a comforting hand against her back. "I was so worried they'd come back before you got here." He nodded, a fierce determination kindling in his eyes. "I'm here now, Grandma. They won't get near you again. Let's head inside. There's a lot we need to discuss." Inside the house, the morning light filtered through faded curtains, illuminating old photographs that told stories of bygone days. Bee perched on the sofa, her nerves still rattled. Jack grabbed a quilt from a nearby chair and draped it over her shoulders, a gesture of comfort. "I came as fast as I could," he said softly. "Tell me everything that's happened since Travis and Mick first showed up." Bee recounted the tense encounter from the previous day, detailing their threatening words and the unsettling confidence they carried. Then she described Red, his smug demeanor, and how he seemed to confirm there was a larger group backing these attempts to seize her land. Jack listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. He also noticed her voice grew steadier as she spoke, revealing her innate resilience. Even at 93, she refused to cower. When she finished, Jack rubbed his chin, deep in thought. Sounds like a coordinated effort. They might be trying to buy up remote properties through intimidation, possibly to set up a smuggling route or hide illegal operations. He took a moment to scan the room, windows, doors, every potential entry point. We need to secure this place, and we need allies. Can't we just call the police? Bee asked, though she already suspected the answer. Jack sighed. Of course we can file reports, but these guys know how to operate in the shadows. By the time the sheriff's deputy comes out, they'll vanish. If the local department's not used to heavy gang activity, they might be outgunned. His gaze flicked to the old framed photo of Bee's late husband. I won't let them corner us while we wait for help. She nodded. I understand. Do what you have to do. Jack pulled out his phone, thumbing through contacts. I've got a buddy from the Army, Tony Hawk Hawkins, who lives a few hours away. He's specialized in surveillance and personal security. I'll see if he can come out for a few days. He paused, meeting Bee's eyes. He's trustworthy. We served together in some tough spots overseas. Bee's lips curved in a small smile. If he's a friend of yours, I know I can trust him. She placed a hand on his. Thank you, Jack, for coming. I know it's a lot to ask. His jaw tensed. You never have to thank me, Grandma. You're the closest thing I've got to a mother. We handle this together. The seriousness of his voice made her realize just how high the stakes were. But for the first time since Travis and Mick appeared, she felt a spark of hope. If anyone could protect her farm, it was Jack Thatcher, whose name still carried quiet reverence in certain military circles. He rose, moving to check the locks on each window and door. I'm going to do a thorough patrol around the property, he said, adopting a calm, methodical tone. We'll figure out any weak points and fortify them. These thugs operate on fear. They expect you to cave. We'll show them they picked the wrong target. Bee watched him go, pride and concern mingling in her chest. Though she dreaded his involvement, seeing him here, taking charge, reassured her. Yes, there was danger ahead, but Jack had returned home, and that single fact brought a comfort she couldn't quite put into words. After a quick breakfast, Jack donned work boots and headed outside. Bee followed, though he urged her not to strain herself. I'm fine, she assured him, determined to prove that, despite her age, she could help. Together they walked the perimeter of the farm, the crooked wooden fence, the small orchard of apple trees, the barn where Bee kept an aging tractor and a couple of horses. As they went, Bee pointed out subtle details, where the soil eroded near the creek, the tangle of bushes concealing an old storm cellar, and a disused greenhouse her husband had built long ago. Jack took mental notes, vantage points for potential snipers, paths intruders might use to approach unseen, and safe spots where Bee could hide if trouble escalated. They ended the inspection at the barn, where Jack tested the sturdiness of the doors and windows. We can store supplies or set up a fallback position here, he said, pushing on a loose board. Reinforce the windows with plywood. Maybe install a couple of motion sensor lights outside. Bee leaned on her cane, which she seldom used but kept handy for long walks. This place feels like it's about to become a fortress, she observed ruefully. Jack forced a tight smile. For a while, maybe. But once these gang members realize you're not an easy target, they might shift elsewhere. He paused, glancing at her. They're counting on you being isolated and scared. We won't let them corner us. She put a hand on his shoulder. I've never seen you like this, so focused, so professional. I always knew you were in the special forces, but seeing it in action is different. He shrugged. Delta Force taught me how to think strategically, but it's also about protecting what matters. This farm is family. It's where I learned the value of hard work and honesty. I won't let these criminals take that away. They spent the next few hours putting the plan into motion. Jack made calls to local hardware stores, arranging deliveries of floodlights, cameras, and locks. Bee oversaw the orchard, determined that at least some normalcy remained. Around noon, her phone rang, a neighbor offering a heads-up that a group of unfamiliar bikers had been spotted on the county highway. With each tidbit of news, the tension ratcheted higher. By mid-afternoon, Jack had purchased the basic equipment he needed. He installed several motion-activated lights around the farmhouse and patched up a weak corner of the fence line near the backfield. As he worked, a single question kept surfacing in his mind. Why Bee's farm? Yes, it was remote, but plenty of properties in the area fit that description. He couldn't shake the feeling that the gang's plans were bigger than just buying cheap land. When he finally paused for a drink of water, Bee handed him a glass. Her eyes looked tired, but her posture was steady. You'll be careful, won't you? She asked softly. I don't want you taking risks on my account. Jack set the glass down. You're my family, Grandma. If that's not worth risking everything for, I don't know what is. News travels quickly in a small town. By late afternoon, word had spread that menacing bikers were scoping out Bee's farm and that her grandson, some kind of special forces soldier, had shown up to defend it. Some neighbors quietly offered support, phone calls asking if Bee needed groceries delivered or if she wanted a place to stay until the tension cooled. She politely declined, insisting she would not abandon her home. Jack appreciated the concern, but knew this situation might escalate beyond casual offers of help. He began calling in more specialized resources. First on his list was Tony Hawk Hawkins, a fellow Delta Force veteran known for his expertise in reconnaissance and private security. When Hawk answered, Jack explained the situation concisely. Threats, possible gang involvement, potential violence. I'm about 2 hours out, Hawk said without hesitation. I can pack up gear and head your way tonight. Relief flickered through Jack. That'd help a lot. We can coordinate a solid defense and hopefully deter these guys before it gets too ugly. He hung up, hearing the faint roar of motorcycle engines in the distance. Were they passing by or circling the property? Jack moved to an upper window of the farmhouse, scanning the tree line. Nothing seemed out of place, but he knew better than to trust appearances. Criminal elements thrived on surprise, especially against a target they presumed to be weak. Coming downstairs, he found Bee in the kitchen, brewing a pot of tea. She shot him a tight smile. I thought we could both use something calming. You've been on your feet all day, and I'm too nervous to just sit. He accepted a cup, the fragrant steam curling upward. Thank you. Sipping slowly, he allowed himself a brief moment of warmth, a simple comfort against the cold reality knocking on their door. Hawk's on his way. He'll help reinforce our defenses and keep watch while we figure out the gang's motives. Bee nodded. I remember meeting Tony once years ago at some military function. He seemed nice, though rather serious. Jack smirked. He's a good man and one of the best soldiers I've ever known. If anyone can help keep you safe, it's him. They chatted a bit longer, voices hushed but comforting, until a loud noise erupted from outside. Jack placed the cup down, rushing to the front window. Through the glass, he saw 3 bikers revving their engines at the edge of the driveway, flipping the bird at the farmhouse. One shouted something that Jack couldn't make out, but the tone was unmistakably hostile. Jack sighed, every nerve alert. They're testing us, seeing if we'll scare easy or call the cops. He turned to Bee. Stay inside, lock the door. I'll deal with them. He stepped onto the porch, leveling a steady glare at the bikers. One of them laughed, the sound carrying through the dust-choked air. What's a single guy gonna do against 3 of us? Jack said nothing, letting his calm silence speak volumes. After a few drawn-out seconds, the trio peeled off, throwing gravel behind them. Returning indoors, Jack found Bee's knuckles white around her teacup. You see what I mean? He said gently. They're escalating, trying to intimidate us at all hours. Her mouth set into a firm line. Let them try out. This is my home and it's your home too. We're not budging an inch. Jack nodded. Then we hold our ground. And in that moment, any lingering doubt about their course of action dissolved. With reinforcements en route and a plan forming, they would not be easy prey for any gang. Night descended over the Thatcher farm with an uneasy hush. Jack roamed the property, double-checking locks and scanning fields with a powerful flashlight. The barn, orchard, and homestead felt strangely serene, as if holding its breath. Bee sat in the living room, quietly knitting, an attempt to steady her nerves. Close to midnight, headlights rumbled up the driveway. Jack stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand, only to relax marginally when he recognized Tony Hawk Hawkins's battered Ford truck. Hawk climbed out, giving a quick wave. Lean, with close-cropped hair and an air of calm competence, He wore jeans and a plain jacket, but carried a hard case that likely contained firearms or surveillance gear. "Jack," Hawk greeted, extending a firm handshake. "Seems like you've got a party brewing." Jack managed a wry smile. "Wish it were under better circumstances. Glad you could make it." He helped Hawk unload his gear, then led him inside. B greeted Hawk with subdued warmth, offering him a seat and a plate of biscuits. "Long drive?" Hawk nodded politely, though his expression remained focused. "Only got a bit of traffic near the highway. Don't worry, ma'am. I'm here to help keep this place safe." Over the next hour, the three huddled at the kitchen table. Jack and B filled Hawk in on every detail. Travis and Mick's intimidation, Red's visit, the repeated sightings of bikers hovering around the outskirts. Hawk jotted quick notes in a small notepad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Any idea on the gang's size?" he asked, tapping his pen. Jack shook his head. "We've seen at least half a dozen. Could be more. They haven't openly attacked yet, just posturing." Hawk considered. They might be waiting for backup or a green light from whoever's leading them. Gangs like these usually have a hierarchy. He glanced around the modest kitchen, eyes resting on the old wooden cabinets and framed family photos. They might have targeted this farm because of its seclusion, or maybe they planned to use it for a staging area. Either way, intimidation is their first weapon. B set a fresh pot of coffee on the table. "How do we stop them without getting caught in a violent showdown?" Hawk exchanged a look with Jack. "Best case scenario, we gather evidence of their threats, turn it over to the authorities, and they face real charges. Realistically, though, these guys are counting on fear to force you to sell before the law catches up. We need to make them understand you're not an easy target and that they'll face serious consequences if they keep pushing." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. B peered through the curtain at the moonlit fields. "I've lived here my entire life," she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "If it comes to a fight, I just hope no innocent blood gets spilled." Jack rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll do everything we can to avoid bloodshed. But if they try to harm you or anyone else on this farm, we'll do what's necessary." A silence settled, thick with unspoken worries. Hawk gave B a respectful nod. "You made the right call bringing Jack in on this, ma'am. He's not one to back down." The first order of business for Jack and Hawk was upgrading the farm's defenses. Early the following morning, they installed motion-detecting floodlights around the barn and porch. Hawk checked potential blind spots where intruders might sneak in, using a handheld device to measure range for a few small wireless cameras. B watched from the porch, torn between gratitude for their thoroughness and sorrow for what her peaceful home had come to. By midday, the men took a break. B insisted on cooking a hearty lunch of chicken stew and cornbread. They ate in relative silence, each lost in thought. Afterward, Jack pulled out a laptop, connecting it to the newly positioned cameras. The live feeds were rough, thanks to sporadic rural internet, but workable. "We'll see them coming at least," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Hawk retrieved a folded map of the region, spreading it on the kitchen table. "I circled some spots where they could be camping or meeting, abandoned lots, closed gas stations, empty warehouses. We should keep an eye out." "How?" B asked, furrowing her brow. "We can't just drive around looking for a bunch of criminals." Hawk nodded. "True, it's not ideal, but Jack and I might do a quick recon later, maybe at dusk, to see if we spot any large gatherings of bikes. We'll be careful." B gripped the edge of the table. "Just promise me you won't take unnecessary risks. If something happens to either of you." Jack placed a gentle hand over hers. "Don't worry, we'll be cautious. Right now, the best defense is knowledge, knowing what we're up against." Outside, the early autumn breeze rustled tree branches, creating a gentle backdrop that clashed with the tension bristling around the farm. Hawk went out to the barn to organize some tactical supplies he'd brought. A few licensed firearms and a stash of non-lethal tools like pepper spray canisters and flashbang grenades. He'd served alongside Jack in missions that demanded cunning and precision. Typical scare tactics from a local gang wouldn't easily rattle him. Meanwhile, Jack made a few discreet phone calls to old contacts who might have intel on any criminal outfits expanding in the area. One friend who had ties to a federal agency promised to snoop around. "Could be a new chapter of an outlaw motorcycle club," the contact speculated. They've been known to pick off land from retirees, set up operations. I'll see what I can dig up. As the day wound down, Hawk and Jack prepared for a quick drive. Bee watched them head toward Jack's rental car, heart heavy. Part of her wanted to forbid this scouting mission, to keep them both close, safe on the farm. But she understood the necessity. They needed solid information if they were going to stop these criminals without a full-blown war. They drove through nearby roads, passing dilapidated barns and boarded-up feed stores. In one dusty lot, they spotted 3 motorcycles parked by a convenience store that had gone out of business years ago. Hawk discreetly snapped photos from a distance, noting gang symbols on the bikes. "Matches the scorpion insignia B mentioned," he muttered. "We're on the right track." An hour later, they returned to the farm, none the wiser about the gang's leadership or full scope. But they had gleaned enough to confirm the criminals were more organized than a ragtag band of petty thieves. "We'll keep digging," Jack told Hawk, stepping out of the car. The amber glow of sunset bathed the fields in golden light, a moment of tranquility that made Bee's plight all the more tragic. Night fell gently, but the tension remained. In the distance, engines rumbled. Jack and Hawk exchanged a knowing look. They both recognized it as the sound of wolves prowling, testing the perimeter of the land they aimed to seize. Close to midnight, the farm's motion sensor lights flared, revealing half a dozen bikers creeping near the northern fence line. Jack and Hawk, who had been monitoring the camera feeds in the living room, sprinted outside. Bee, staying near the window, watched anxiously. The beams lit up the intruders, each wearing leather vests and bandanas, patches displaying that ominous scorpion. One of them raised a shotgun and pointed it vaguely toward the house, but seeing the sudden flood of light, he faltered. Hawk was already positioned behind a large tractor, rifle aimed. "Put the gun down," he bellowed, voice echoing across the silent fields. A brief standoff ensued. The tension thrummed like a live wire. Jack, flanking from behind the barn, managed to shout, "You're trespassing! Leave now!" His tone carried an air of authority that even hardened criminals might respect. The bikers hesitated, uncertain of how many defenders lurked in the darkness. One of them, braver or more reckless, fired a shot in the air. The muzzle flash illuminated their faces, young, defiant, and jittery. Hawk fired a warning round over their heads, and the would-be invaders quickly realized they were exposed. Shouting curses, they retreated into the darkness, engines roaring as they sped off. In under 2 minutes, the threat was gone, leaving behind a swirl of dust. Heart pounding, Bee watched Jack and Hawk regroup near the tractor. Neither appeared injured. She exhaled in relief, though fear still quivered in her chest. Jack checked the fence line, squinting through a flashlight. "No damage, aside from some shotgun pellets in the dirt. They were testing us." Hawk nodded, keeping his rifle close. "They know we're armed, well prepared. This might deter them, or it might make them try something bigger." Returning to the house, they found Bee pacing in the living room. She looked up with a mixture of worry and gratitude. "Thank God you two are all right." Her voice trembled, betraying the stress of the confrontation. Jack set a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We're fine, Grandma. They didn't even get close." Hawk nodded, placing his rifle in a safe corner. "But this confirms they're escalating. They have numbers, guns, and they aren't afraid to intimidate with live rounds." Bee's lips thinned. "I just don't understand why they want this land so badly. It's not the largest farm around, and there isn't anything particularly valuable here, aside from the orchard and a little creek." Jack exchanged a look with Hawk. "Could be they want a base in an out-of-the-way area. Smuggling routes, drug labs, plenty of reasons criminals choose remote properties. Or maybe they plan to force you off, flip the land quickly for profit. We can't be certain yet." Bee nodded, sinking into a chair. "At least we know we can defend ourselves." She gazed around the living room, the soft glow of a single lamp casting shadows on the faded wallpaper. "But how many more attacks like that can we fend off?" Jack gently took her hand. "We'll reinforce security and push back as needed. I promise, Grandma, we won't let them take this farm." Hawk's resolute nod sealed the vow. As dawn broke, Jack and Hawk carefully inspected the farmyard where the brief firefight had occurred. Shotgun pellets were lodged in a fence post, and footprints indicated at least 6 men had crouched behind scrub bushes for cover. Hawk used a small camera to document the damage and footprints in case law enforcement needed evidence later. B remained inside, finishing a phone call with a sheriff's deputy. She had filed a report, but the deputy's response had been lukewarm. Too few officers to patrol every rural stretch, limited resources. The local authorities weren't entirely indifferent, but they had been overwhelmed by the sporadic vandalism and property crimes for months. "We'll send someone as soon as we can, Mrs. Thatcher," the deputy had said, sounding worn. When Jack and Hawk returned, Bee relayed the conversation with a shake of her head. "They're so understaffed, it might be days before they can send a patrol car to pass by once or twice. These bikers won't wait around for that." Jack exhaled, rolling a kink out of his shoulder. "We'll keep building our defenses. I'm also in contact with a federal friend who might expedite things if we can prove there's a bigger criminal organization here. But that takes time." Hawk grunted in agreement. "Time is the one thing these guys want to deny us. They'll press harder, hoping to scare you into signing over the land before help arrives." Determination tightened Bee's features. "Then I won't scare," she said simply. "I'll stand my ground." For the rest of the morning, Hawk installed more sensors around the property, making sure every approach route triggered an alert. Jack systematically walked through the orchard and stable areas, clearing away potential hiding spots. He removed broken tools, old barrels, anything that could provide cover or be used as makeshift weapons. Although some part of him hated turning the farm into a militarized zone, he knew it was necessary. They reconvened at midday for a quick lunch of sandwiches, eaten under the shade of the front porch. Bee's gaze drifted across the fields, where stalks of corn swayed in the breeze. "I planted that field with my husband long ago," she reminisced, a distant look in her eye. "He never complained about the hard work, said it kept him honest." Jack shared a gentle smile. "You two built a life here. We'll protect that." His phone buzzed, interrupting the rare quiet moment. Checking the screen, he saw it was his federal contact. Stepping aside, he answered. "Jack, I've done some digging," came the low voice on the other end. "The Scorpion Patch gang's likely led by a man named Viper, real name Clyde Harrison, convicted of assault years back. Word is he's recruiting local thugs, possibly planning to expand an outlaw biker chapter. If he's targeting your grandma's farm, it could be strategic. He's known for establishing drug-running routes through quiet rural areas." Jack's jaw tightened. "Thanks for the intel. Anything else?" "They might be heavily armed. So watch your six. I'll keep you posted if I learn more." Ending the call, Jack conveyed the info to Hawk and B. Hawk's expression darkened. "Viper's name isn't new. I've heard it before in passing. He's got a reputation for brutality. If he's behind this, we can expect a bigger confrontation soon." B drew a breath. "We'll be ready, won't we?" Her voice wavered only slightly. Jack rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Grandma. We'll do whatever it takes." For the next 2 days, relative calm settled over the farm, at least on the surface. No brazen visits, no harassing phone calls. Yet both Jack and Hawk felt the underlying tension, as if the gang was regrouping for a decisive blow. Bee noticed it too. She went about her chores with determined focus, refusing to let fear paralyze her. Early on the third day, Jack decided to gather more concrete information. Leaving Hawk to guard Bee, he drove into the neighboring town where rumors suggested the gang had a hangout. The streets were mostly empty in the mid-morning sun, lined with boarded-up shops and a gas station that looked half abandoned. Jack parked discreetly near a disused lumberyard, stepping out to survey the area. He soon spotted a cluster of motorcycles outside a shabby warehouse. The Scorpion patches were unmistakable. Jack snapped a few distant photos with a small camera, noting the building's entrances and the men loitering out front, perhaps half a dozen. The local cops, if they came at all, would be outnumbered and outgunned. Circling wide to avoid attracting attention, Jack found an elevated spot behind an old water tower where he could observe unseen. A black SUV pulled up, and a tall man with a shaved head stepped out. Jack recognized him instantly from the description. Clyde Viper Harrison, sporting multiple tattoos and a scar along his cheek. His posture reeked of control and swagger. The biker seemed to hang on his every word. Jack strained to pick up bits of conversation in the quiet air. "The old lady's farm. Some ex-military guy, Viper growled. I don't care if he's a Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, or Rambo's cousin. We take that land. Another voice chimed in. Yeah, we almost had her spooked, but this guy's messing things up. Viper slammed the SUV door, shaking his head. Then we deal with him too. Assemble everyone. Tonight we finish this. The men nodded. Jack's pulse quickened. He'd confirmed his worst suspicion. They were preparing a large-scale assault, planning to hit the farm in overwhelming force. Satisfied he had heard enough, Jack eased away from the vantage point. In the cover of some scraggly trees, he jogged back to his car. The drive home felt like an eternity. He kept checking his mirrors, half expecting a tail, but none appeared. By the time he pulled up the long driveway to B's farmhouse, the sky had grown overcast, clouds churning like a brewing storm. Hawk was already outside, scanning the horizon. Spotting Jack's car, he hurried over. You look tense. What did you find? Jack recounted Viper's declaration, the men prepping for an attack that very night. Hawk's expression hardened. Then we need a plan. Fast. If they're coming in numbers, we can't rely on half-baked defenses. We should be ready to hold out until backup arrives. If it arrives. I'll call my federal contact again, but even if the authorities mobilize, they won't get here instantly, Jack said grimly. We have to be able to repel a large group. B joined them, her gaze flicking anxiously between their faces. Do we stay or do we run? Jack inhaled. She had never suggested leaving before. It showed how grave the situation was. But he shook his head firmly. They might torch the place the moment it's empty, and there's no guarantee they won't come after you elsewhere. Our best shot is to stand firm. She tightened her grip on her cane, face resolute. Then that's what we do. Hawk patted her shoulder. We'll protect you, B. We'll dig in it for the fight of our lives if we have to. Beneath the ominous gray sky, the trio headed inside to prepare for the showdown that loomed on the horizon. Late afternoon brought a nervous hush over the farm. Jack, Hawk, and B convened in the living room to finalize their plan. The storm cellar beneath the farmhouse, built decades ago for tornadoes, provided the safest spot for B if bullets started flying. Jack insisted she remain there once they got word of the bikers' approach. No arguments, Grandma, he said gently but firmly. If they storm the property, Hawk and I can't defend you in the farm effectively if we're worried about your safety out in the open. B's eyes glistened with a mix of fear and pride. I understand, just don't take unnecessary risks. Hawk handed her a small two-way radio. We'll keep in touch. If you hear us give the all clear, stay put anyway until we confirm it's safe. While B packed essentials in the cellar, flashlight, water, first aid kit, Jack and Hawk performed a final check of their weapons and gear. Both had legally acquired firearms. Hawk with his rifle for long-range coverage, Jack with a shotgun and sidearm. They'd place flashbang grenades and pepper spray canisters at key points around the property, aiming to disorient any attackers without resorting to lethal force unless absolutely necessary. Night fell swiftly, aided by the thick, swirling clouds overhead. A breeze rustled through the orchard, and the motion sensor lights flickered occasionally, triggered by passing wildlife. Every time a light switched on, tension flared in Jack's chest. He'd faced firefights in desert cities, jungles, and remote compounds overseas. But this was his grandmother's farm, the place that had always symbolized refuge. The irony wasn't lost on him. Around 10 p.m. the phone rang. Jack snatched it up, heart pounding, only to hear his federal contact on the line. We're still trying to coordinate with local law enforcement, the voice said. If you can hold them off for a bit, we might get a team out there, but it won't be immediate, Jack. He grimaced. Understood. We'll do our best. He hung up, finding Hawk's gaze. We're on our own, at least for a while. B, now seated on the porch with them for one last cup of tea, set her mug down. I won't lie, I'm scared. She looked at the darkened fields. But this is home. I won't let them drive me away. Jack reached over, squeezing her hand. I learned courage from you, Grandma. We'll make it through. Behind them, the front door stood ajar, a gentle yellow glow spilling out, a beacon of warmth in a night that promised violence. At 11 p.m., faint engine noises drifted on the wind. Jack's instincts sharpened. He nodded at Hawk, who guided B swiftly to the storm cellar beneath a trap door in the kitchen floor. Once she was safely inside, they locked it from above. B's voice muffled from below. Be careful, both of you. Stepping onto the porch, Jack and Hawk scanned the murky distance. The distinct rumble of multiple motorcycles and trucks grew louder, merging into a predatory snarl. This was it, the final confrontation. The farmland that had once been a cradle of family and peace was about to become a war zone. Jack's pulse pounded, but his mind was clear. Protect B, protect the farm, and send Viper's gang scurrying back to whatever hole they crawled out of. Lightning flashed across the distant sky as a procession of headlights emerged, gradually forming a line down the dirt road leading to B's property. Jack crouched behind a low stone wall near the porch, shotgun at the ready. Hawk positioned himself in the barn's loft, rifle barrel poking through a narrow opening. They doused the main lights around the house, relying on night vision scopes, spotlights, and motion sensors to track movements. Engines cut. Low voices drifted, punctuated by curses and the clank of shifting weapons. Jack counted at least 15 silhouettes stepping off motorcycles and exiting trucks. In the faint glow of the storm-charged sky, he recognized the imposing figure of Viper, scowl etched on his face. So the tough guy and the old lady think they can keep us out, Viper snarled, his voice carrying across the yard. He swept a flashlight beam over the farmhouse windows. Show yourself, soldier boy. You made this personal. At that signal, some of the bikers fanned out, weapons glinting. Jack took a breath, then triggered one of the remote flashbangs placed in the gravel yard. A blinding white light and ear-splitting pop exploded among them, sending half the gang reeling, clutching their ears. Hawk seized the moment, firing a precise shot that struck the ground near a group attempting to flank the barn, enough to force them to scatter without immediate lethal harm. Shouts and confusion erupted. Viper roared, "Spread out, you idiots!" As his men regrouped, a second flashbang detonated, courtesy of Jack. Using the case, Jack fired his shotgun loaded with beanbag rounds at two bikers trying to rush the porch. They went down hard, gasping in pain. Bullets zinged past. One shattered a porch post. Another whistled by Jack's ear. He ducked, adrenaline spiking, but maintained focus. On the barn roof, Hawk switched to a vantage that allowed him to spot several attackers attempting to slip around the orchard side. A single bark of his rifle sent them diving for cover. "You're surrounded," Hawk hollered. "We're better trained, and we see every move you make. Leave now." That only enraged Viper further. "I don't care if you're Delta Force," he yelled, letting off a spray of bullets into the darkness, hoping to catch someone off guard. Sparks flew as a bullet ricocheted off the porch railing. Another round punched into the front door. Still, neither Jack nor Hawk took a lethal shot unless absolutely necessary. If the gang retreated, that would suffice. They weren't here to kill, just to protect. The sensor lights flicked on, flooding part of the yard in harsh illumination. It revealed several bikers sprawled on the ground, groaning from beanbag hits or flashbang disorientation. A few still fought on, returning fire sporadically. One tried to toss a Molotov cocktail at the barn, but Jack blasted it mid-throw, causing the bottle to shatter harmlessly away from the structure. In the midst of the fray, Viper realized his men were pinned. The farmland wasn't the easy target he'd expected. He was facing skilled opponents on home turf. Panting, he yelled, "Fall back! Regroup behind the trucks!" Some obeyed, stumbling over injured comrades as they retreated. Sensing the turning tide, Jack advanced carefully from his position. "You want to keep going?" he shouted toward Viper. "You're done here. No one's dying tonight unless you force my hand." Another flicker of lightning revealed Viper, sweat streaming down his temples, eyes wild. For a split second, he locked eyes with Jack, and Jack saw raw hate contorting his features. Viper raised his handgun, aiming at the figure who had humiliated his gang. Jack sidestepped behind a tree trunk, the bullet whizzing past. In response, Hawk fired a well-placed shot that shattered Viper's gun hand. The leader dropped his weapon, howling in agony. That was the breaking point. The remaining bikers, demoralized and outmatched, scrambled to their vehicles, peeling away in a cacophony of revving engines. Some even abandoned their wounded, who lay cursing in the muddy yard. Viper himself stumbled, clutching his bleeding hand, and tried to follow. But Jack closed in, shotgun leveled. "You're not going anywhere," Jack said. voice resonating with the finality of a man who'd seen too much violence in his lifetime. Snarling, Viper attempted to throw a punch with his uninjured hand, but Jack easily dodged and cracked him across the jaw with a single deft motion. The biker lord collapsed into the mud, consciousness fading. In the aftermath, the yard looked like a war zone, flashbang debris, bullet casings, scattered bikes. A few groaning gang members writhed in the dirt. Hawk came down from the barn, rifle still at the ready, scanning for any stragglers. "We got them on the run," he confirmed, panting. Jack keyed his radio. "Grandma, are you all right?" A moment of static, then B's trembling voice answered, "Yes, I'm safe." He let out a breath of relief and glanced at the battered, unconscious Viper. "Call the sheriff, Hawk, and maybe an ambulance. We'll hand these guys over along with the evidence we've gathered." Hawk nodded, already on the phone. Off in the distance, thunder rumbled, the storm finally closing in. Jack rubbed a hand over his face, heart hammering from the confrontation. Despite the fury of the battle, they had protected B's farm without crossing into needless bloodshed. Once the authorities arrived, both local deputies and a hastily assembled federal task force, B emerged from the cellar. Her eyes welled with tears at the sight of bullet holes in her porch and battered soil, but she hugged Jack and Hawk fiercely. "You saved my home," she whispered, voice cracking with relief. They didn't correct her, even though it had taken all three of them, her steadfastness included, to hold off the gang. As dawn finally broke over the farmland, bathing it in gentle light, a sense of peace settled again. The orchard swayed in the breeze, unscathed, and the old horses nickered softly from their stalls. Bee stood on her porch, cane in hand, gazing at the hills with weary gratitude. Jack and Hawk stayed close, not as conquerors, but as guardians. For at least this small patch of earth, decency had prevailed over lawlessness. And though the farm bore scars from the night's struggle, it remained in B's possession, safe, at peace, and guided by a love stronger than any outlaw's threat. From my personal perspective, the triumph at B's farm is more than just a victory over a gang. It's a testament to the power of love and loyalty. Witnessing Jack step in with his specialized training and seeing B's unwavering courage reminds us that true strength often lies in unity and faith in one another. Despite the bullet holes and moments of uncertainty, the farm ultimately stands as a place of peace and hope. Looking back, this story highlights resilience, the value of steadfast friendships, and the importance of protecting what matters most. I'd love to hear what you think. Share your opinions in the comments, and let's discuss how determination and compassion can overcome even the darkest threats. Thank you for tuning in. Your insights make our community stronger.